Hello, everybody, beloved brothers and sisters from all around the world, and welcome to this first ever tree update by Anzaro Quantum Healing. My name is Ibo, and I am the creator of Anzaro Quantum Healing, and our mission is to heal the planet through the people, and we want to do so by creating mindfulness and healing apps that heal people and plant trees in the process. So this first ever tree update is also in connection with the first app that we have just released on iOS and Android. It's available both in the App Store and Play Store. It's called My Sleep Affirmations, and it's an app that can reprogram the subconscious mind by recording affirmations and then have them played thousands of times over while you are sleeping, and in that way reprogramming the subconscious mind while you are sleeping. And you can break your limiting beliefs and plant seeds in your subconscious mind in order to attract the life that you desire that way. And with that app, we plant a tree for every 7 sessions. That means that if you use the app, you can get to plant a tree every week, which is also why we made this update. Because at the time of making this video, the counter in the app shows that 42 trees is planted, but we want to make sure that at all time whatever the number is written in the app is the actual number of trees planted, so there will always be more trees planted at all times than what that number shows. So we will plant the trees in advantage. And this is what this video is about, is to show you the users that we want to deliver our promise to the world and plant the trees. And in this video we are going to cover the planting of 3,111 trees. Yeah, that's right, it's the first video and we already get to plant over 1,000 of trees. I mean, that's quite a lot. 3,000 of those trees are planted with our partner organization Eden Projects. Eden Projects is a non-profit organization that is all focused about planting trees, and they have international infrastructure set up in Asia, South America and in Africa. And what I really like about them, and the reason that we chose them, is that they don't just go and plant trees in these areas, but they also go and teach the local communities and the people the importance of planting trees. That means that the local people in the areas, they get the tools and all the knowledge they need to help plant the trees and take care of them, so the trees can take care of them and their families by providing them with food which they both can eat but also sell and get money and send their kids to school and create an ecosystem like that where they can sustain themselves. It's a huge honor and privilege to be a part of this Eden Projects. I remember half a year ago when I saw their webpage and I just knew I wanted to be one of the partners and plant trees through them. And having a partner organization like this is convenient because we can't always plant the trees ourselves. But we also want to plant the trees ourselves. And that's why I went to Turkey, where my parents are from, to plant some trees myself. I spent the summer there. I went to Turkey for a few weeks, and even though I was born and raised in Denmark, where I lived most of my life, I still feel connected to Turkey because this is where my roots are, this is where my ancestors lived, this is where they were born, and this is where they are sleeping right now and watching us from above. So it was also to honor them that I wanted to plant the trees there. And it was also convenient because my grandfather has a lot of land that is just like not being used, and there's just weed growing. And I told him about this project that I wanted to plant a lot of trees, and I got their permission to play and do whatever I wanted. So it was just like everything was just lining up. And a few weeks prior going to Turkey, I have a dear friend that mentioned me about this method called Miyawaki Method, which is an afforestation method or approach to grow forest 10 times faster and 30 times more dense than conventional forests. And it can be self-sustainable in 2 to 3 years, where conventional forests can take 7 to 10 years. And I thought, wait, this sounds really cool. And I went home and did some research, and after that I just got some really good ideas on how I could use this approach to make a forest, because we were simply not living there most of the year, so we couldn't take care of it, but the trees could help take care of them together, like with each other, this way. And how it works is that you plant the trees very closely together. So for a single square meter you can plant 3, 4, up to 5 trees, and that's quite a lot of trees in a square meter. But this way, the trees or the forest will not just grow dense, but it will also grow fast, because the trees, they want to get as much sunlight as possible, and the only way to do that is to grow upwards, because they can't really get more sun at the sides. There's other trees that wants to get sun too, so they compete with each other and grow upwards, and therefore it grows really fast. Now with this approach, it's also really natural that some of the trees die along the process, but once they die and decay, they become nutritions for all the trees surrounding, and they will be sharing the nutrients and mineral and water and so on across with each other with the root mesh that will be created below the surface in the soil. And I just thought, this sounds really incredible, this is what I want to do. So when I arrived in Turkey, I went to study the trees in the local areas the first few days, just to get an overview, because the trees there are very different from the trees in Denmark, and just like the trees are different anywhere else in the world. And as I was doing this, I also took some cuttings, or samples as you would say, to make some clones. And this was just like a test, an experiment, to see if the cuttings would root out, so I could use them to plant later on. And so I took the cuttings and placed them in a humid container, and I just left them there for some weeks so they could grow roots, and then hopefully they could be planted. But that was just an experiment. Once I identified the trees that we wanted to plant, I marked up the area which I wanted to plant the trees, and I started preparing the soil. Now the soil in the village where my parents are from is far out in the countryside. It's a desert-like environment, and the soil is really hard, especially during the summer because it doesn't rain a lot. And there is also rocks in all sizes, which makes the earth, the soil, even harder. But so we started by prepping the soil and marking up where this first compartment should be. And this was like one of the key ideas that I had using this approach, is to build compartments or modules. And this probably becomes because I have a background in software engineering. We tend to develop stuff in modules and so on that we then put together. And using these compartments and modules, we could create modules for every year, different sizes or multiple compartments, along with pathways in between, to get the feeling and idea of a natural forest, which with a pathway that you can walk between, and then you would have trees on both sides, and then there will be like hallways and so on. And this was the whole idea with this compartments and modular way of building this little forest in my grandfather's huge backyard. So we had to prep the soil, which is the first step of the Miyawaki method. And to do that, we tilled the soil, the huge area, which I was a bit against, because I watched this documentary that's called Kiss the Earth, or Kiss the Ground, which they explain about the bad things that actually tilling the soil affects the environment through farming. But this wasn't farming. This wouldn't be something that we would do every year. It would just be this once, and it would make the earth more easy to work with, because it was super hard. So once the tilling was done, we marked up the compartment and then started to prep the soil, which we did by just removing the rocks that were there and then adding some goat poop actually in with the soil to increase the nutrient value, but also to increase the moisture retention in the soil. And the village, there's a lot of all kinds of animals living there, farm animals like goats, sheep, cows, and so on. And some of my friends over there have a lot of goats, so I went there to sack up some goat poops, which we use for this. I used some of it to mix in the soil, and I left some to put on top on the soil, which I'll explain later. But after this, after preparing the soil, we went to the nursery where we wanted to get plants. Now, the Miyawaki approach requires to use different kind of native trees in different sizes. So, firstly, there is the shrub layer, then there is the sub-tree layer, and then you have a tree layer, and then you have the canopy layer. And using these different local trees with these kind of functions or sizes creates the same way natural forest form, which you can see in this video, and you'll see the different layers which appears. So after I went to the nursery and got like I think 10 different kind of species, and we managed to load up the little van with 75 trees for this first compartment. And then we drove back to the village, and it was like a 1.5 hour drive. And that's just because the village is really far out in the countryside, so that was it was the closest big city. And when we got there, I gave them some water. It was probably a stressful ride, and then in the evening I placed the plants or the saplings for where they should be. And also, according to the Miyawaki method, is that you're supposed to place the saplings in a random order. They shouldn't have like some specific pattern or anything. They should just be random. So the placement was super easy. It was just to not place the same kind of trees next to each other. And then actually I started planting, and I remember the first tree that I planted was a pine tree. I don't remember exactly what kind of pine tree it was, but because we had a few different species of pine trees, but it was beautiful, and I named it Raphael according to after the archangel that governs healing. I found it as a proper name. It just came at me at that moment. And then I went on to plant the rest that evening, and it was just so beautiful to work with the soil, dig the holes, and then make these small little canals where the water would flow, because I gave them a lot of water. Transplanting a plant from a pot to the earth is stressful for the plant, so I just wanted to make sure they had a lot of water. And I then had to finish the rest for the day after, where I wake up at 6 a.m. in the morning to hopefully finish the rest before the afternoon heat arrive. And I managed to, together with my little brother, who's also the cameraman behind the show. He helped me in between the recordings, and together we planted all the 75 trees which we have purchased in this first compartment. And once the afternoon heat arrived, it gets like really hot to work out in the field, but luckily we were done at this time, and it was already like a few days had passed with preparing the soil and doing all this kind of stuff behind the scenes. So we went into the shade in my grandfather's garage, where there were some old branches which we cut into small pieces that we wanted to put above the ground, which is the final step in the Miyawaki method, is to add a layer of mulch that prevents the water in the soil to evaporate. So this layer of mulch will keep the soil below humid, and we added so the rest of the goat poop and the branches and so on, but there were still some spaces, some spots which weren't covered. And that same day my parents were in the city, so I asked them if they could bring a few sacks of sawdust, which they did. And once we placed that around, all the holes got filled, and it also looked really nice, and it was just so satisfying. And we decided actually to do another compartment next to it, one a little bit smaller, because at this point of time I was destroyed. Like, my back hurt so much, my arms were like I couldn't move them, and there was this one day where I just couldn't move from the bed. It's actually the day after we finished. But I had a little bit more time, so I thought I could do one compartment more, and we just went on with the same way by preparing the soil. And this time, instead of adding the poop in the soil, we decided to mix in with some hay, because this also gives the air more air, the soil more air, and while also increasing the moisture retention in the soil. So it was playful, it was nice to do this part. And after this, me and my little brother, we went back into the city to the nursery, a different one this time, where we bought 42 trees. These were a little bit bigger, but yeah, this is what we had the space for in the car. And then we came back, and digging the holes, it was really tough work. Like, I started digging the holes and I could feel my body was like, no, you're not ready for this. So I asked some villagers for help, which they were happy to help, and we actually managed to plant all those trees in 1 hour. I mean, it would just happen so fast, and unfortunately I don't have footage of that, but it was just so incredible, and the power of teamwork is really not to be underestimated. And then we went to get some more poop, and this time we tried to get some cow poop actually, which we also scooped up in some sacks. And what I noticed is that actually cow poop is a lot more heavier than goat poop. But yeah, I don't know, it's just a random fact that I wanted to share with you. Maybe if you ever want to share a random fact, you can share that one. But we wanted to spread it out all across in the compartment to create this first layer of mulch, and we just worked so well. And on top of that, when me and my little brother went to the city, we also got a few sacks of sawdust, which we added on top, and it was just like so amazing. I mean, it was near perfect. And this is just, when you do things and you get the experience, that you know how to do things differently for each time. So now we had those two compartments, and even though I had bought 112 trees, we planted 111, because in the last compartment there was a tree which I forgot to plant because it was out in the corner and I couldn't see it. And when we were planting it with the villagers that were helping, it was going so fast that I just couldn't see it. And I just noticed it after we put all the mulch and everything on top. So I was like, yeah, I can donate this to my parents' garden there in the village. So we planted it there. But the whole Miyawaki Forest ended up having 111 trees planted, which is also a sign, because it's an angelic number. If you care about those kind of things, you know that these kind of numbers have meanings. So overall, it was just really a beautiful experience. I mean, it was to honor my ancestors that I did this, and it was super healing for me, and I felt I got their blessings. I connected with the earth, the soil, where my roots are from, and I really felt that they are not just standing behind me, but they are standing with me in the projects that I'm about to do in the future, which will be really healing for the planet and every living being inside of it, which will be like so incredible healing apps where I will dive deeper into energy healing, which I'm practicing a lot, and I'm combining it with yoga, and it will be accessible in the app as well. It's like we have a lot of future projects. So please, if you're watching this video, subscribe to my channel. This is actually the first video we are ever posting, and I want it to be about trees because this is what we are all about in Anzaro Quantum Healing. We really want to plant the trees. Like, this is what we can do, you know. It's not just for us but for the planet and for all the living beings inside of it. And the last part of the tree planting was actually to install the automatic watering system. We installed a timer that was set to run every morning at 7 o'clock for 2 hours and installed it with a drip irrigation system. So there was a hose connecting to all the trees installed with a little drip end, so when the timer, the watering system started, all the trees would get water. And this is a really efficient way to water the trees because you're not really wasting any water. The water goes straight directly to the roots of the trees, and it just ended up being so beautiful, and it's automatically running every day. In the last day, when we finished all the work in the village and we were heading back to the city of Konya, where I'm from, I went to visit Rumi, Maulana Jalaluddin Rumi, a visit. And it was just something that I wanted to do for quite some time. Like, after starting in my spiritual journey, I saw this Rumi quotes all around, and I had no idea who he was until I found out that it's actually he that we know as Maulana in Turkey, and I happen to be from the same city where he lived and where he's buried. So I was really eager to go visit his tomb a visit. And Rumi is a Sufi mystic that is known for his timeless poems and quotes, and is just also like discovering this made me more interested in learning about his life, and I bought a book at his tomb, and I also found a place where I was sitting and meditating and connecting with him and his consciousness. And after that, my last thing I went to do was go to a hammam, which is a Turkish bath, and get a scrub. And if you ever go to Turkey, this is the one thing that I can recommend you to do, because you can't really do it anywhere else in the world. And the scrub, I mean, the guy or the girl just scrubs you everywhere, and combining it with a massage, and when you're done you just feel like reborn. I mean, and after all that work in the field and scooping goat poop, it was really needed, and I felt like it was a perfect last day to spend it outside the field. So thank you so much for being here. I would like to end this video with a quote by Rumi, which is, "If I love myself, I love you. If I love you, I love myself. It's impossible to give something that you don't have. Love yourself so you can love others. Self-love is the foundation of all love." And it's a cycle, because as we love ourselves, we have the ability to love others, and the more kinder and more compassionate and more caring that we are to others, we love ourselves even more. So with that note, and from the infinite space in my heart, I love you. Thank you.